Elias Voss crash lands on Chorus 7, a rusted wasteland where his ship's the only thing left from a life the Syndicate torched. His family's screams still echo in his ears. At the outpost, two women dangle over spinning blades. Kalia, her red skin glowing with defiance, and Vera, green and snarling, both chained for a bloodthirsty crowd's bets. One lives, one dies. Nobody cares who. 10 years, Elias ran from that fire, a coward haunted by his brother's chains. Now he's staring at them, Kalia's eyes begging for a fight, Vera's curses spitting at death, and the blades are seconds away. The Syndicate's won every time. Planets gutted, souls crushed, his own included. Do nothing, and their blood stains his hands too. Another failure. Another ghost. Elias grips his knife, cuts their chains, and pulls them from the brink. Not one, but both. 3 broken souls spark a fire the Syndicate can't snuff out. Love forged in dust, blades raised in revolt. This isn't survival, it's war. Stay tuned. They're rewriting the stars. Before we dive in, double-check you've hit subscribe. Don't miss stories like this. The dust serpent shuddered as it punched through the thin, gritty atmosphere of Chorus 7, its engines coughing like an old man too stubborn to die. Elias Voss gripped the controls, his knuckles whitening against the worn leather grips, until the ship finally kissed the ground with a groan of metal and a puff of red dust. The landing gear creaked, settling into the uneven terrain, and for a moment, silence swallowed the cockpit, silence that felt more like a held breath than peace. Elias flicked off the power, the hum fading into the eerie whine of the wind outside, a sound like a dull blade scraping across stone. He pushed the hatch open and stepped out, his scuffed boots sinking into the crimson sand that swirled around him like a living thing, tugging at his ankles as if Chorus 7 itself wanted to claim him. The air hit him first dry metallic, laced with the faint tang of rust and something sour, like the planet was rotting from the inside out. Elias squinted against the twin suns, their pale light bleeding through a haze of dust, casting jagged shadows from the hulks of abandoned machinery that loomed across the horizon. Towering cranes, half-collapsed drills, and skeletal frames of forgotten starships dotted the landscape, relics of a time when Chorus 7 was a jewel in the crown of the Stellar Alliance's mining empire. Now, it was a cosmic junkyard, a graveyard where dreams came to rust and scavengers picked over the bones. Elias adjusted his worn leather jacket, the collar frayed from years of wear, and muttered under his breath, "Deliver the cargo, grab the credits, get out." It was his mantra, a lifeline to keep him moving through a galaxy that had chewed him up and spat him out. He was 32, though the lines etched into his face, around his sharp gray eyes and across his stubbled jaw, made him look older. A freelance pilot, he lived job to job, hauling contraband across the stars for anyone with credits to spare. The dust serpent was his only companion, a battered freighter patched together with scavenged parts and a stubborn will to keep flying. Its hull bore scars from pirate skirmishes and asteroid fields, each in a story Elias didn't care to tell. He checked the cargo hold, running his calloused fingers over the crates of old energy cells. Nothing fancy, just enough juice to keep some scavenger's rig running another month. The deal was simple. Drop them off at the local gang's outpost, collect his pay, and vanish before trouble found him. Trouble always found him, though, no matter how fast he ran. Chorus 7 wasn't just a wasteland. It was a crucible. Survivors flocked here. Outcasts, deserters, thieves, drawn by the promise of scraps and the faint hope of striking it rich on some overlooked vein of ore. They traded tech, weapons, even lives in makeshift markets that stank of oil and desperation. Elias had seen it all before, on a dozen worlds just like this one, but something about Chorus 7 gnawed at him. Maybe it was the way the dust clung to his skin, gritty and invasive, or the black smoke curling like serpents from the distant horizon, a warning stitched into the sky. He shook it off, slinging his pack over one shoulder and locking the ship with a hiss of hydraulics. His hand brushed the plasma knife at his hip, a gift from his father before the war, took everything. His parents, his home, his purpose. A memory flickered, unbidden, sharp as a blade. His mother's voice crackling through a dying comms unit, her screams swallowed by static as Hadean Syndicate ships rained fire on their colony. "Run, Elias. Don't look back," she'd begged, moments before the signal cut out. He'd been 16, helpless, watching the sky burn from a stolen escape pod. Then there was his brother, Jaren, 2 years younger, all wide eyes and reckless grins, dragged off to die in a Syndicate slave mine. Elias had tracked him for months, only to find a cold ledger entry. Deceased, exhaustion. That was 10 years ago, but the weight still pressed on his chest, heavy as the dust clouds rolling in now. He clenched his jaw, forcing the past back into its cage. Not today, he growled to himself, kicking a loose stone that skittered across the cracked ground. He trudged toward the outpost, a ramshackle cluster of tents and metal shacks a kilometer away, its lights flickering like dying stars. The wind picked up, howling through the skeletal remains of a mining rig, and Elias caught a glimpse of something odd, movement near the edge of the settlement. Not the usual shuffle of traders, but a crowd, their shouts carrying faintly over the desolation. He paused, narrowing his eyes. Trouble, his gut whispered. He'd sworn to steer clear, to keep his head down, but his feet didn't listen. They carried him closer, step by heavy step, toward the clamor. The plasma knife felt warm against his thigh, a quiet promise. Whatever was waiting, Elias Voss wasn't ready to face it, but he wasn't turning back either. Elias Voss trudged closer to the outpost, the shouts growing louder, sharper, until they pierced the dusty haze like shards of broken glass. His boots crunched over cracked stone as he crested a low ridge, and there it was, a monstrous conveyor belt, a relic of Chorus 7's mining past, its rusted frames stretching 50 meters across the sand. The machine roared, a guttural bellow of grinding gears and screeching metal, its jagged teeth spinning in a blur of death. A crowd of scavengers, their faces smeared with grease and grit, circled it like vultures, their cheers rising in a fevered chant. Credits flashed on makeshift holoscreens, bets piling up as fast as the dust devils swirling nearby. Elias froze, his breath catching as he saw the center of their twisted game. 2 women, alien and striking, were chained to the conveyor surface. One had skin like molten ember, a deep red that shimmered under the twin suns, her white hair cascading like a frozen flame down her back. Her name, he'd later learn, was Kalia, her posture rigid, chin high, eyes burning with a pride that defied the rusted shackles biting into her wrists. Beside her, the other thrashed against her bonds, her green skin glinting like wet leaves after a storm, her white hair whipping wildly as she snarled curses in a tongue Elias didn't know. Vera, she'd be called, fury incarnate, her muscles taut with defiance. The conveyor jolted forward, dragging them closer to the spinning blades, now less than 100 meters away. A hulking figure stepped from the crowd, his scarred face lit by the glow of a crackling loafer horn. "Chose the path," he bellowed, voice amplified over the machine's roar. "One lives, one dies. You, outsider, pick, or they both get shredded." The crowd erupted, fists pumping, credits shifting as bets locked in. Elias felt a shove at his back, rough hands forcing him forward until he stood at the edge of the chaos. His gray eyes darted between the women, his pulse hammering in his ears. "I don't play your games," he spat, but the leader's laugh cut through the din, cold and jagged. "No choice, no mercy. Decide or they're pulp." The conveyor screeched louder, the blades glinting as they chewed the air, now 80 meters off. Elias's mind raced. He wasn't a hero. Heroes died young, and he'd survived too long for that. He'd seen cruelty before, burning wrecks of freighters, screams fading into the void, bodies left to rot on worlds the Syndicate had bled dry. Jaren's face flashed in his mind, his brother, pleading as chains dragged him away. Elias had done nothing then. Too young, too scared. Not this time. Something snapped inside him, a spark igniting in the ashes of his apathy. He couldn't watch this. He wouldn't. His hand flew to his plasma knife, the blade flaring to life with a hiss of blue light. The crowd's jeers faltered as he sprinted forward, boots pounding the sand, the wind clawing at his jacket. He reached Kalia first, dropping to one knee beside her. His fingers brushed her shoulder, her skin warm, like embers smoldering beneath silk, and a jolt ran up his arm, electric alive. "Hold on," he growled, jamming the knife into the shackle's lock. The metal resisted, sparks flying as he twisted, his knuckles scraping raw against the rust. Kalia's gaze locked on him, unreadable but piercing, her breath steady despite the death closing in. The blade bit through, the chain snapping with a clang. Elias pivoted to Vera, her snarls cutting through the noise as she yanked at her bonds. He gripped her arm to steady her, his hand sliding briefly along her waist. Firm, vibrant, like the pulse of a living forest, and she stiffened, her green eyes flashing up at him, wild and questioning. "Move!" he shouted, slicing her shackle free just as the conveyor lurched again. The blades were 30 meters away now, a wall of spinning steel screaming toward them. Elias grabbed both women, one hand on Kalia's wrist, the other on Vera's elbow, and hurled them forward with every ounce of strength he had left. They hit the sand in a tangle of limbs, Elias crashing atop them as the conveyor roared past, its teeth slashing the air inches from his back. Dust exploded around them, choking and thick, the machine's howl fading into a dull whine as it rolled on, empty-handed. The crowd's cheers turned to shouts of rage, fists shaking, credits lost. Elias lay there, chest heaving, the coppery taste of adrenaline flooding his mouth. Kalia shifted beneath him, her warmth seeping through his jacket, while Vera's ragged breaths brushed his cheek. He rolled off, sprawling onto his back, staring at the hazy sky. The leader's voice cut through again, venomous. "You've meddled, outsider. You'll pay for that." Elias didn't look at him. His eyes flicked to Kalia, who sat up with a grace that belied the chaos, her white hair streaked with red dust, and then to Vera, who glared at him like he'd stolen something from her. He smelled it then, faint, strange, a whiff of smoky wood from Kalia, like a fire that never died, mingling with Vera's sharp, earthy scent like rain on broken leaves. "You're welcome," he muttered, voice hoarse, but neither replied. Their stares held something deeper, confusion, maybe gratitude, maybe something else. The blade slowed in the distance, and Elias knew one thing for sure. He'd just kicked a hornet's nest, and there was no flying away now. The world came back to Elias Voss in fragments. First the sting of sand in his throat, then the dull throb pulsing through his hands, raw and scraped from wrestling with the shackles. His eyelids fluttered open, the dim light blurring into focus as he registered the rough canvas overhead, patched with stains and sagging from makeshift poles. He lay on a thin mat, the fabric scratchy against his back, his jacket crumpled beside him like a discarded skin. The air was stale, heavy with dust, and the faint metallic tang of blood. His own, he realized as he flexed his fingers and felt the sting of a cut across his knuckles, crusted over from the plasma knife's recoil. He groaned, pushing himself up on one elbow, his head swimming as the outpost chaos replayed in his mind. The conveyor's scream, the crowd's fury, the weight of two lives he'd yanked from death. A shadow shifted nearby, and Elias's gaze snapped to it. Kalia sat a few feet away, perched on a crate, her red skin catching the faint glow of a flickering lantern. Her white hair hung loose, streaked with crimson dust, framing a face that held no fear, only a quiet, piercing intensity. Her eyes, deep and molten like liquid fire, studied him with an unreadable calm, as if she were measuring the man who'd upended her fate. She didn't speak, but her presence filled the tent, steady and unshaken. Elias's breath hitched, his chest tightening under that gaze, and he forced his eyes away, only to land on another figure. Vera stood near the tent's flap, arms crossed, her green skin taut over lean muscle that rippled with every restless shift. Her white hair was pulled back now, knotted roughly, but strands still clung to her sweat-streaked neck. She glared at him, her emerald eyes sharp as blades, and when she spoke, her voice cut through the silence like a whip. "Who are you to stick your nose in my fight, human?" The words dripped with suspicion, each syllable a challenge, but there was a tremor beneath them, something raw, unguarded, that she couldn't quite hide. Elias met her stare, his throat dry, and rasped, someone who didn't feel like watching you get turned into scrap. The air thickened, tension coiling between them like a live wire. Kalia broke it, her voice low and smooth, a contrast to Vera's edge. "You acted without knowing us," she said, tilting her head slightly. "Why?" Elias rubbed his face, wincing as his fingers brushed the cut. "Didn't think about it," he admitted, his tone gruff. "Just moved." It was the truth, raw and unpolished, and it hung there, heavy in the stillness. Vera snorted, but Kalia's lips twitched, the barest hint of a reaction. Then Vera stepped closer, her boots scuffing the dirt floor, and Elias caught a shift in her expression, something softer, fleeting. "I heard it," she said almost to herself. "Your heartbeat, even now from across the tent." She tapped her chest, her fingers lingering there, and Elias frowned, confused. "What?" he asked, but Kalia answered, her voice steady as stone. "The mark of bonding," she said. "Our peoples, Zarathian and Nexian, carry an ancient rite. When a life is saved at the edge of death, a link forms. Not just tradition, biology." She paused, her gaze dropping to her hands, then back to him. "I feel you too, like a wind I can't see, brushing against me." Elias blinked, his mind scrambling to catch up. "You're saying, what? I'm stuck in your heads now." Vera's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Not just us, fool. You're in it too." She pointed at him, her finger trembling slightly. "You didn't ask for this, but neither did we." The words landed like a punch, and Elias felt a strange hum beneath his ribs. Not pain, not fear, but something alive, tugging at him. He shook his head, trying to dismiss it, but the sensation lingered, faint and insistent, like a thread tying him to them. Kalia slid off the crate, moving closer, and Elias caught a whiff of her scent, smoky, like what burned low and steady, grounding him even as his pulse quickened. "On Zorath," she said, "I was exiled for killing a tyrant to free my kin. They called it treason." Her voice was calm, but her eyes flickered with old pain. Vera's jaw tightened, and she turned away, staring at the tent flap. "Next is one on my mind," she muttered. "I built tech to read thoughts, too well. They turned it on my brother instead, burned him out testing it. I ran when they came for me." Her fists clenched, and Elias saw the scars on her knuckles, faint silver lines against green. He leaned back, the mat creaking under him, his own scars aching in sympathy. "Sounds like we've all got ghosts," he said, voice low. "Syndicate took mine too. Family, home, everything." He didn't elaborate, didn't need to. The shared weight settled between them, heavy but not suffocating, a bridge built from broken pieces. Then, from beyond the tent, a low rumble broke the quiet, engines distant but closing fast. Vera's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. "They're coming," she hissed. Kalia stood, her posture shifting to something alert, regal. Elias grabbed his jacket, the hum in his chest flaring sharper now, and he knew, whatever this bond was, it had just pulled them into something bigger than survival. The rumble of engines grew louder, a predatory growl that chased Elias Voss and the two women out of the tent and into the night. His boots pounded the sand as he led them away from the outpost, the twin suns sinking below the horizon, painting chorus, 7 in hues of blood and shadow. Kalia moved beside him, her strides fluid and silent, her red skin barely visible in the fading light. Vera took the rear, her green form a flicker of motion, her sharp ears attuned to every sound behind them. Elias's chest buzzed with that strange hum, the mark of bonding, they'd called it, pulling him toward them like a tether he couldn't cut. He spotted a jagged outcrop ahead, a dark slit carved into its base, and pointed. "There," he rasped, voice rough from dust and adrenaline. "We hide." The cave swallowed them as they slipped inside, its mouth narrow enough to scrape Elias's shoulders, the stone cool and damp against his jacket. Inside, the air shifted, thicker, older, laced with a faint mineral tang that clung to his tongue. He fumbled for a glow stick from his pack, snapping it to life, and a soft amber light spilled across the chamber. Crystalline formations jutted from the walls, their facets glinting like frozen stars, casting fractured shadows over ancient machinery half buried in the floor. Rusted gears, cracked panels, relics of a civilization long gone. The cave stretched deeper, its ceiling lost to darkness, a labyrinth of secrets Chorus 7 had forgotten. Elias sank against a slab of stone, his breath steadying as he wiped sweat from his brow. Kalia settled nearby, cross-legged, her white hair catching the glow like a halo of frost against her ember skin. She seemed at ease, her posture regal even here, but her eyes flicked to the entrance, alert. Vera paced, her boots scuffing the dirt, her green hands flexing as if itching for a fight. "They'll track us," she muttered, her voice low and taut. "Those engines, Syndicate hounds, not just scavengers." Elias nodded, his own instincts screaming the same. "We've got time," he said. "Not much, but enough to breathe." He reached for his pack, pulling out a dented canteen, and took a swig, the water tepid but a relief to his parched throat. As he lowered it, his hand brushed Kalia's thigh, unintentional, just grazing the edge of her knee where she sat. Her skin burned hot, like sun-warmed stone, and a jolt shot through him, sharp and electric, making his fingers twitch. He froze, meeting her gaze, and saw a flicker in those molten eyes. Not anger, not surprise, but something deeper, a spark that mirrored the hum in his chest. "Sorry," he mumbled, pulling back, but her lips curved faintly, a ghost of a smile that said she'd felt it too. Vera stopped pacing, her shadow falling over them as she leaned against a crystal pillar. "You're loud," she said, tapping her chest again. "Your heart. It's like a drum in my skull." Elias frowned, rubbing his sternum where the hum pulsed stronger now, a rhythm he couldn't ignore. "What's this mark really do?" he asked, his voice gruffer than he meant. Kalia answered, her tone soft but firm. "It binds us. Zarathians say it's fate, a savior's thread. Nexians call it resonance, an echo of life shared." She paused, her fingers tracing a crack in the stone. "I feel your strength, your fear. It's unsettling." Elias exhaled, leaning back, his shoulder brushing the cold slab. "Great. So I'm an open book to you too." Vera smirked, a rare crack in her guarded shell, and slid down to sit across from him, her knees drawn up. "Not everything," she said, her green eyes softening for a moment. "Just enough to know you're not like them." She jerked her head toward the cave mouth, meaning the Syndicate, the scavengers, the galaxy's predators. Then her gaze dropped, and her voice fell to a whisper. "My brother. He was like you once. Curious, stubborn. They took him to test my work, mind readers they wanted. He didn't survive it." The words hung there, heavy as the cave silence, and Elias felt a pang in his gut, sharp as a blade. He knew that loss. Jaren's face flickered in his mind again, the kid brother he'd failed. "I'm sorry," he said, meaning it, and Vera's shoulder brushed his as she shifted closer, almost unconsciously. Her warmth was different, vital, like soil after rain, and the contact steadied him, grounding the hum into something real. "Syndicate's good at breaking things," he added, his voice rough. "Took my family too. War didn't care who was left." Kalia's hand moved then, a slow, deliberate slide across his arm, her fingers light as a breeze over his sleeve. The touch left a trail of heat, a quiet rouse that made his skin prickle, and he glanced at her, caught by the softness in her eyes. "On Zorith," she said, "I dreamed of freedom, my village chained, worked to death. I killed the overseer, freed them, but they banished me for it." Her voice held no regret, only resolve, and Elias saw the warrior beneath her calm, the fire that matched her skin. "You broke chains too," she said, her hand lingering a moment longer before pulling away. He nodded, the hum swelling now, a chord struck between them. 3 lives tangled by loss, defiance, and something unspoken. The cave felt smaller, the air charged, their stories weaving a fragile thread in the dark. Then a faint clatter echoed from outside. Metal on stone, too close. Vera sprang up, her hand on a scavenged blade at her hip. "They're here," she hissed. Kalia rose smoothly, her silhouette sharp against the glow. Elias grabbed his plasma knife, the hum in his chest a drumbeat now, syncing with theirs. They weren't safe, not yet, but in that moment, hiding in the ancient cave, they weren't alone anymore. The clatter outside the cave sharpened into a mechanical whine, a chorus of engines snarling closer, their vibrations rattling the ancient crystals overhead. Elias Voss crouched near the entrance, plasma knife glowing faintly in his grip, its blue light dancing across his dust-streaked face. The hum in his chest, the mark of bonding, thrummed like a war drum, syncing with the rapid breaths of Kalia and Vera behind him. "Syndicate hounds," Vera hissed, her green fingers tightening around a scavenged blade, its edge chipped but lethal. Kalia's molten eyes narrowed, her curved dagger glinting as she pressed against the wall, her red silhouette a shadow of poised fury. "They found us," she said, voice steady as stone. Elias nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we make them regret it." A shadow loomed beyond the cave mouth, and the air split with a roar as a figure emerged. Crever, a towering cyborg bounty hunter clad in Syndicate black, his left arm replaced by a plasma cannon that hummed with lethal charge. His face was half metal, one eye glowing red, the other scarred and human, a sneer twisting his lips. "Outsider," he barked, voice amplified by a vocal modulator. "You and your pets cost me credits. Time to pay in blood." Behind him, 3 Syndicate grunts fanned out, their rifles snapping to aim, while a pair of drones buzzed overhead, their scanners painting the cave in crimson beams. Elias's gut clenched. This wasn't a scavenger rabble. This was a kill squad. "Stay low," he whispered, snatching a jagged shard of ancient metal from the cave floor, a relic from the machinery around them, its edges sharp enough to cut. He darted forward, rolling into the open, and hurled the shard skyward. It spun, catching the drone's scanner light, and the machines veered off, chasing the decoy into the dark. Crever's cannon whined, a pulse of plasma searing the spot Elias had just left, the blast scorching the stone into a smoking crater. "Cute trick," the cyborg growled, stomping closer, his boots cracking the ground. "Won't save you." Vera moved then, a blur of green against the cave's glow. She darted to a rusted control panel half buried in the wall, her fingers flying over cracked buttons. "Old tech," she muttered, ripping wires free with a spark. "Let's see if it still bites." A low hum built, then a shriek as the cave's forgotten defenses woke. Spikes shot from the floor, spearing one grunt through the leg, pinning him with a scream. The ground shuddered, dust cascading from the ceiling, and Vera grinned, feral and fierce. "That's for my brother," she spat, ducking as a drone fired, its bolt sizzling past her ear. Kalia struck next, slipping into the shadows like a wraith. Her dagger flashed, a crescent of steel, and she lunged at the second grunt, her blade slicing clean through his throat. Blood sprayed across the crystal wall, a dark arc that gleamed wetly in the amber light, and the man crumpled, gurgling. She spun, dodging a rifle burst, her white hair whipping as she vanished back into the dark. Crever roared, his cannon swinging toward her, but Elias was already moving. "Hey, Tin Man," he shouted, sprinting across the cave, his boots skidding on loose stone. The cyborg pivoted, firing, and a plasma bolt grazed Elias's side, searing his jacket and scorching his ribs. He gritted his teeth, pain flaring hot and bright, and stumbled. Kalia was there in an instant, her red arms hooking under his, pulling him back as another blast shattered the slab they'd hidden behind. her chest pressed against his back, her warmth flooding through him like a furnace, her breath hot and quick against his neck. "Move, fool!" she snapped, her voice a whip, but her grip was steady, fierce. Elias's heart slammed against his ribs, the hum spiking wild at her touch, and he twisted free, nodding through the haze of pain. "I'm good," he gasped, though the burn said otherwise. She held his gaze a beat longer, her eyes molten with something unspoken, then turned back to the fight. Vera hacked the second drone, rerouting its targeting with a jury-rigged pulse from the panel. It spun, firing on its own squad, and the last grunt fell in a heap, his chest a smoking ruin. Crever snarled, charging now, his cannon glowing white-hot. Elias met him head-on, ducking a swipe of the cyborg's metal fist and jamming his plasma knife into the cannon's barrel. Sparks flew, the weapon whining as it overloaded, and Crever backhanded him, sending him sprawling into the dirt. Pain exploded across his jaw, copper flooding his mouth, but Kalia was there again, leaping onto Crever's back. Her dagger plunged into his neck, severing wires and flesh, and the cyborg staggered, his red eye flickering. Vera slammed the panel one last time, and a final trap triggered. A slab dropped from the ceiling, crushing Crever's legs. He collapsed, circuits sparking, his cannon fizzling out. Elias crawled to his feet, chest heaving, as Kalia slid off the dying cyborg, her blade dripping. The cave groaned, cracks spidering up the walls from the fight's chaos, and dust rained down, thick and choking. Vera kicked Crever's twitching arm, her green face streaked with grime. "Stay down," she spat. Elias wiped blood from his lip, meeting their eyes. Kalia's fierce calm, Vera's wild triumph. They'd won, but the cave trembled, a warning they couldn't stay. Together, they stumbled toward the deeper tunnels, breath ragged, bound tighter by the fight they'd survived. The cave's tremors chased them deeper, the walls groaning as dust and stone rained behind. Elias Voss stumbled forward, his side still burning from Crever's plasma graze, the hum in his chest a frantic pulse tying him to Kalia and Vera. They pushed through a narrow tunnel, the air growing cooler, fresher, until the passage widened and the ground sloped downward. Elias slowed, his boots sinking into soft earth, and the amber glow of his stick flickered against something alive, vines curling along the walls, their leaves shimmering with bioluminescent veins. The tunnel opened into a hidden valley, a secret cradle beneath Chorus 7's broken crust, and Elias's breath caught at the sight. Trees rose around them, their bark smooth and silver, branches heavy with glowing orbs that pulsed like tiny stars, blue, violet, gold, casting a soft radiance over the cavern. A lake stretched at the center, its surface mirror still, reflecting the light in a dance of liquid fire. The air hummed with life, sweet with the scent of moss and dew, a stark contrast to the dust-choked wasteland above. Vera stepped forward, her green skin catching the glow, her white hair shimmering as she traced a leaf with her fingers. "A biodome," she murmured, softening her sharp edges. Some old terraforming project, abandoned, but it thrived. Kalia knelt by the water, her red hand dipping in, ripples spreading like whispers. "It's alive," she said, her voice a reverent hush. Elias dropped his pack, easing onto a moss-covered stone beside the lake. The fight's adrenaline ebbed, leaving exhaustion and a strange peace in its wake. Vera joined him, sitting close, her knee brushing his as she picked up a smooth, glowing pebble. He reached for it too, his fingers grazing her back, her skin smooth and firm, like spring leaves trembling in a breeze, and a shiver ran through her, her green eyes flicking to his with a quiet spark. "Careful," she teased, but her voice was softer now, unguarded. Elias smirked, pulling his hand back, though the hum in his chest flared at the contact, warm and insistent. Kalia rose, moving to them with a grace that belied the blood still drying on her dagger. She sat on his other side, her red thigh brushing his as she settled, and Elias felt the heat of her, a steady, smoldering fire that seeped into him, grounding and dizzying all at once. "You're a mess," she said, nodding at his singed jacket, but her rare smile broke through, small and warm, lighting her molten eyes. Elias chuckled, the sound rough but real. "Yeah, well, you're not exactly spotless either." He leaned back, the moss cool against his palms, and let the valley's stillness wash over them. "First time I flew," he said, staring at the glowing canopy, "I was 16. Stole a junker from a Syndicate dock, barely got it off the ground before it stalled. Crashed into a scrap heap, walked away with a busted lip and a grin." Vera laughed, a bright, unguarded sound that echoed off the trees, and Kalia's smile widened, her head tilting as she listened. "Foolish," Vera said, nudging him. "I thought you were weak, some drifter with no spine. But you're a wind that shifts everything." Her words hung there, soft and honest, and Elias felt a flush creep up his neck, the hum swelling in response. Kalia's hand found his then, her fingers curling around his calloused palm, her touch firm yet gentle. "On Zorith," she said, "I fought for others, never myself. You reminded me why." Her voice was a quiet flame, and she leaned closer, her white hair brushing his shoulder. Elias turned, caught by her gaze, and she closed the distance. Her lips met his, deep and fierce, a kiss that burned through him like wildfire. Her taste was smoky, alive, and he sank into it, his free hand rising to her cheek, her heat flooding his senses. Vera shifted, her breath quickening, and then she was there too. Her lips claimed his next, wild and untamed, tasting of earth and rain. Her green hands gripped his jacket, pulling him closer, and Elias's heart thundered, the hum a symphony now, binding them in a rhythm older than words. Kalia's fingers tightened on his, Vera's pressed into his chest, and under the starlit glow, they drew together, bodies entwined, breaths mingling, a dance of need and belonging. The lake rippled, its waves pulsing in time with their closeness, a shimmering heartbeat that mirrored their own. The trees swayed above, their glowing orbs flickering like a chorus, branches weaving a song of unity as the valley held them in its embrace. No words passed, only touches, Kalia's steady fire, Vera's vibrant storm, blending with Elias's battered strength. The air thrummed with their shared pulse, the water's gentle lap a soft echo of their fusion, the leaves rustling like a sigh of release. It wasn't just desire, it was a claiming, a vow forged in the quiet after chaos, a truth they'd fought to reach. As they stilled, nestled together on the moss, the valley glowed brighter, its light wrapping them in a cocoon of warmth. Elias exhaled, his arms around them both, and for the first time in years, the weight of his ghost felt lighter, shared, not carried alone. The glow of Starlight Valley lingered in Elias Voss's senses as he led Kalia and Vera back through the tunnels. The hum in his chest, now a steady pulse, a quiet song of their newfound unity. The cave's collapse had sealed their escape route, forcing them upward through a crumbling shaft until they emerged onto Chorus 7's surface. The night sky sprawling above, a tapestry of stars pierced by the faint streaks of Syndicate patrols far off. Elias's boots crunched on the red sand, his sides still aching from the fight, but the weight of Kalia's hand in his and Vera's shoulder, brushing his own, kept him moving. They weren't just survivors now. There was something more, forged in battle and bound by a love that defied the galaxy's cruelty. A faint signal crackled through the comms unit on Elias's wrist, a garbled voice cutting through static. He adjusted it, frowning, until the words sharpened. "This is Relay 3, Alliance of Light. If you're hearing this, head north, coordinates 47.9, 12.3. We're fighting the Syndicate. Join us, or die out there." Vera's green eyes narrowed, her fingers tapping the blade at her hip. "Resistance," she said, a spark of recognition in her voice. "I've heard of them, scattered cells, hitting Syndicate supply lines." Kalia nodded, her white hair catching the starlight. "A cause," she said simply. "One worth our blades." Elias glanced between them, the hum flaring with their resolve, and smirked. Guess we're not done breaking things. They trekked north, the twin suns creeping over the horizon by the time they reached the coordinates. A shallow crater hiding a camouflaged bunker, its entrance masked by a hollow shield flickering against the dawn. A figure emerged, a wiry human in patched armor, her hair cropped short and gray. "Name's Terran," she said, eyeing them with a mix of wariness and hope. "Saw your dust trail from the ridge. Syndicate's buzzing after some stunt at the outpost. You're doing?" Elias shrugged, his plasma knife still caked with Crevor's oil. Might have stepped on a few toes. Terran's grin was sharp. "Good. We need that kind of trouble." Inside, the bunker buzzed with life, dozens of fighters from across the galaxy, their skin a mosaic of colors and scars. A Zarathian with red scales tinkered with a rifle, nodding to Kalia with quiet respect. A Nexian tech, his green hands dancing over a console, glanced at Vera, recognition flashing in his eyes. Terran led them to a hollow table, its map glowing with Syndicate bases dotting Chorus 7. "They're choking this planet," she said, pointing to a cluster of red markers. "We hit their weapon caches, we breathe." "Ewan," Elias met Kalia's molten gaze, then Vera's fierce green stare, and felt the hum solidify into certainty. "We're in," he said, voice firm. Kalia stepped forward, her presence commanding the room. "I'll train your blades," she said, her dagger spinning in her hand with lethal grace. "Zarathian steel doesn't bend, it cuts." Murmurs of approval rippled through the group, the red-scaled fighter grinning as he tested his own weapon. Vera moved to the tech station, her fingers already tracing the console's edges. "Your drones are sloppy," she said to the Nexian, who bristled but listened. "I'll rig them with cave tech, make them sting harder." Elias watched, a flicker of pride warming his chest, then turned to Terran. "I've got a ship, the Dust Serpent. She's banged up, but she flies. Use me for runs, scouting, whatever you need." Days blurred into action. Elias patched the Serpent with scavenged parts, its engines purring again under his hands. He led a raid on a Syndicate fuel depot, weaving through laser fire as Kalia's squad stormed the ground, her blade a red streak through the guards. Vera's upgraded drones buzzed overhead, dropping EMPs that fried enemy turrets, her laugh echoing over the comms as the cache blew sky high. Between missions, they returned to the bunker, their bond a quiet strength. Kalia's steady touch on his shoulder, Vera's teasing nudge as they worked. The hum never faded, a thread weaving them tighter, a promise beyond words. One night, they stood atop the crater's rim, the sky clear and vast above Chorus 7. Elias held Kalia's hand, her red warmth an anchor, while Vera's green fingers laced through his other, her grip fierce yet tender. The stars burned bright, a silent witness to their unity, and a meteor streaked across the black, a fleeting blaze like the path they'd carved from chaos. "This fight," Elias said, his voice low, "it's bigger than us now." Kalia squeezed his hand, her eyes on the horizon. "It's freedom for all who've been chained." Vera smirked, her white hair whipping in the wind, and a chance to break more Syndicate toys. Terran's voice crackled through the comms, urgent. "Incoming intel, big Syndicate convoy, 3 days out. We hit it. We're dust." Elias glanced at his companions, their faces set with the same fire that had carried them through the valley, the cave, the outpost. "Ready," he said, and they nodded as one. The meteor's trail faded, but its light lingered in their eyes, a future uncertain but theirs to shape. Hand in hand, they turned back to the bunker, the alliance of light behind them, a new journey stretching ahead under Chorus 7's endless stars.